Welcome back, everyone, to the Writer's Parachute. We're guiding author and writer dreams to a perfect landing. Today, we have with us in our all new season 2, we have Lori Poland. She comes from us from EndCAN, which is in child abuse and neglect. It's a national foundation. We're also going to talk about her book, which you can see behind me, although it's a little high. I might have to move that down a little bit. It is I Live Here, Learning to Heal Through Embracing Your Story. So, we always start off with our topic of the week. We of course want you to smash that like button. Go ahead and follow us here on YouTube or on your local podcast channel, wherever you find us. And of course, you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter at Writer Parachute. That's Writer Parachute with no S. So let's get on to the topic of the week. If you've been following us here in this season 2, we are devoting most of season 2 to talking about reviews. Reviews are king for authors and writers. They have so much value. If you think about when you're shopping for a book, you're constantly looking at the reviews, good reviews, bad reviews, what they thought, what they liked, what they didn't like. You want to know before you spend your good hard money for that book. So if you think of it that way, it makes a lot more sense about why it is so important, especially when we're buying online. We can't pick up the book, we can't feel it, we can't flip through the pages. Although the Look Inside feature is available on some platforms, it isn't available on all. So reviews are extremely important. But we've talked about editorial reviews and paid reviews, and we've talked about getting reviews, and we've talked about how to get reviews through other means. But now today, I want to talk about thinking a little bit outside the box, beyond Amazon. Think about Goodreads. Now, while Goodreads is a division of Amazon, it is separate. They don't have the restrictive rules on Goodreads that they do have on Amazon, so you have a little more flexibility, less likelihood that your review is going to be taken down compared to the rules and regulations that are given on Amazon. Also, there's other options. Think of the other platforms where your books are available. If you have an ebook, it's probably going to be available on Apple, going to be available on Nook, also available on Kobo, and some of the other ebook reader platforms. If it's a print book, it's likely also going to be available online at Barnes and Noble and at Walmart, at Target, at local bookstores, and it may be on the shelf of those. Now, we'll talk about how to get you on the shelf of those later on, but we're specifically focusing on reviews. So I want you to think about having your reviewers send you a copy of their review. So if for some reason it gets taken down on Amazon, you can have them posted on a second site of their choice. So when you're asking for reviews, think about other sites that you would like to see those reviews on. If it's Goodreads, great. You can always go get it and add it on some other site for yourself, but you can ask those reviewers to do that for you. But think about where you're going to be served, because you don't only want readers being forced to go to Amazon to know about your book. You want them to be able to go to other places, because some people don't always want to buy from Amazon. Some people prefer Barnes and Noble. Some people prefer Apple Books. Some people prefer going to Walmart or Walmart.com and getting their books. And that's fine. So don't, as my mother used to say, cut your nose off to spite your face. Make sure that you're spreading the wealth over all of these platforms that are carrying your book. Because the truth is, if they're not getting any sales of your book, then it's less likely they're going to continue carrying your book. So think about that. The world doesn't end at Amazon with the book. So I want you to think beyond that. So again, that's just our topic of the week. Of course, there's a lot more to learn about this subject and more. So if you want to know more, you can always go to thewritersparachute.com and leave us a message, and we will connect with you. And if we get enough questions about it, we may do a separate show about it. So let's get on with the show. We want to talk with Lori today. We're talking with Lori about her book, I Live Here, Learning to Heal Through Embracing Your Journey. We're also going to talk to her about EndCAN, in Child Abuse and Neglect Foundation, that she co-created. Lori is a thought leader by nature, guiding and leading innovation and conversation about taboo topics using authenticity, humor, and humility. Lori is a therapist who specializes in attachment and trauma, is trained in family counseling, child and adolescent therapy, and infant mental health. Lori maintains a small private practice supporting people in attachment, relationships, and personal growth. She has spent the last 27 years as a public speaker, motivating audiences in self-improvement, personal introspection, and healing through life's presented challenges. We welcome Lori to the Writer's Parachute. How are you today?
I'm so good. I loved listening to the lesson of your topic of the week about book reviews. Man, boy, have my book reviews just impacted my book, my career, our work at EndCAN, all sorts of things in various different ways. So, thanks for that information. And I also really appreciate like diversifying our reviews because I think that being on the various different platforms, whether it's ebook or paperback or hardcover, if it's a printable book, just being able to capture the view and the feeling of people who are reading it. And interestingly, as when I read books, I don't always, and I always read reviews, whether I'm buying a pair of hockey gloves or a book, right? But one thing I find really interesting is that when I read the reviews, especially for a book that's like a memoir like myself, I'm looking for more information. I'm looking like, what's behind the scenes? Have family members reviewed? Have, various different people who are impacted in different ways reviewed? And I know on my book reviews, that's certainly been the case. And it's just so interesting. So thanks for that topic. I loved hearing about that.
Well, it's a very good topic because we forget as consumers what we do, and then from the other side, as the product provider, that we need to replicate things that we do naturally. And you're right, a lot of people do look to those reviews for additional information, but that's not to say that reviews have to be that complicated. You're going to
Yeah,
get a variety of those reviews. That's why we talked last week about the editorial reviews and the paid reviews that do go more in depth. But we don't want to discourage those readers who just want to write a review that said, I love this book, or this book really spoke to me, or something of
right.
that nature. We don't want to make it so complicated that we do scare away those general reviewers who either loved or didn't love your book, and them
1,000%.
saying why. So,
Yeah.
I agree with you. It's very important to have those and to have that information because it does help on the buying journey. We
Yeah.
talked about the three legs of the buying journey. You have the book cover, you have the title, you have the back cover copy. And I would say this is almost creating a fourth leg is those reviews. So,
No, totally. Yeah, 100%. I love it. Very
oh,
nice.
well, thank you. And we
Yeah.
want to talk a little bit about your foundation and how they kind of join together with your book, I Live Here. So, why is child abuse and abduction kind of an important topic to you? I mean, I know from reading the book, but we have a lot of readers here that this is their first time meeting you and seeing your book. So, if you could kind
Yeah.
of give us a taste of that.
Well, I want to hope and believe that child abduction and child abuse is at least a topic of knowledge and a topic of desired ending for everybody. I've never met anybody who's against like not ending child abuse. Like everybody I've ever met is like, yeah, it's a worthy cause and something that I don't think as a society we really understand the impacts of. But for me specifically, my book itself is about my own story and my journey, and we can go into that in a little bit. But I wrote my book after starting at the National Foundation to End Child Abuse and Neglect, which is also named EndCAN for short because it's a mouthful. But I founded this organization with the doctor that treated me after my abduction at the age of 3. And he was the dean of a prominent medical school for 25 years and had seen how heart disease, cancer, diabetes, premature births, breast cancer, all had improved because there was a national organization focused on that topic, excuse me, specifically, and ending it and helping the general public understand it through prevention, education, and research, and then obviously changing laws and integrating, healthcare coverages so that those things were better taken care of. So we thought we would do the same thing for the topic of child abuse and neglect. And a huge part of that is creating an advocacy circle and a voice around the topic at hand.
Mhm.
So I felt as a leader, it would be hypocritical of me to ask people to come forward and share their stories if I hadn't also done so myself. And I've also found a lot of value in recognizing that every human I've ever known has a story, and it's what are you going to do with that story? How are you going to use that story to impact and improve the world before you leave it?
Mhm.
And for me, I felt not only obligated but excited and honored to
Mhm.
be able to share that story. And so my memoir is, a lot about this trauma that I went through, but then the impacts of that trauma and how do you heal from that trauma as I've aged. And so that's kind of where I'm at.
I love that. And, as I invoke my mother a lot because she was very impactful in Maya. And she said, the things that we go through are like a big rock. We either pick it up and carry it on or we let it weigh us down in that moment.
Mm,
So, and I
absolutely.
think that's what you're doing here is you've decided to pick up that rock and carry it on. And, it's symbolic because people can see when they're in that moment that there is a way through.
Yeah,
There is another side to it, that
absolutely.
is happy, that is joyful, that is, if not normal, it's more towards normalized.
Absolutely. Well, and I think, I've yet to meet very many people that don't have something in their life that wasn't hard.
Mhm.
Like, I mean, and whether that hard is defined as abusive,
Mhm.
whether that hard is defined as trauma or loss or grief, whatever that hard is, it's taking it and creating something valuable and meaningful out of it, and like I said earlier, doing something good with it. So that's essentially what I am trying to do here, and it's been really fun,
Well,
honestly.
I think you've done an amazing job. So we're going to talk, excuse me, I'm having the same problem. So we're going to talk a little bit. You are the co-founder of EndCAN, which
Yep.
is in child abuse and neglect. And we
Mhm.
wanted to know, I mean, you sort of talked about that a little bit, but what made you want to create this foundation, which is also an organization that hosts activities to expand the information and to help. And I
Yeah.
wanted you to kind of talk about those because that's actually how you and I met, was
Yeah, it
talking
is.
about these
Yeah,
events.
which is so neat. Yeah, so at EndCAN, our focus is we're not a direct service organization because there are thousands of direct service organizations across this country who are doing great things. The unfortunate part is that the field of child abuse and neglect is very stigmatized. A lot of people think that that happens only to people in poverty or people who are marginalized, or the age old saying like, well, not in my neighborhood. And in truth, child abuse and neglect does not discriminate. Like, I mean, it happens to all ethnicities, all genders, all age ranges. I mean, it is, and it does not ever go away.
Mhm.
So just like we learned language
Mhm.
before we remember learning language, and that language is serving both of us in this moment very well. When we have trauma, or when we have experience, or when we have healthy or unhealthy attachments early in life, that stays with us in this moment and in all of our moments. And so I try and help people to understand that. And so at EndCan, our focus is just helping people understand that coming together, creating a shared voice, a shared effort of focus, and making the topic a little bit more socially approachable, and that it doesn't make you bad, it doesn't make you good, it doesn't make you better, it doesn't make you worse. It's just a place
Mhm.
for people to feel heard and to be supportive, and they don't have to be survivors. They don't have to be against it. They don't have to be for it. It's genuinely like, let's just stop this. Imagine
Mhm.
what would happen if we had a world where our kids were, you know, a little treated a little bit more healthily. Imagine if either of us, and I don't know if you have a story, but I do know that you have a childhood, and
Mhm.
imagine if some of the things in your childhood hadn't happened that
Mhm.
really imprinted and influenced who you are now.
Mhm.
Like, imagine where we would be. And so, not that I have regrets, but instead, I want my grandkids to be able to talk a little bit more openly, so
Mhm.
that when and if something was to ever occur, they have the
Mhm.
opportunity to say no. They have
Mhm.
the opportunity to ask for help. They have the opportunity to be nurtured after whatever that hard thing was,
Mhm.
so that they didn't have to carry that with them in silence for a long time and deal with it later. It's just kind of like attending to problems as they arise. And I just think imagining a world like that seems pretty great to me.
Right. Well, and I have a couple of questions about that. So I know that, child abuse is more of a secular thing. It's like a learned child abuse tends to be more likely to be a child abuser. And a lot of times it's because there isn't that knowledge of separation between what is abusive and what is not. So do you offer direction towards education or any kind of help for those, parents that are seeking the information so that they are not passing on?
1,000%. So, as you had mentioned and alluded to earlier, we do a lot of events.
Mhm.
And at our events, we bring providers
Mhm.
to communities,
Mhm.
and we also bring providers together in community.
Mhm.
So, within our organization, we are kind of a
Clearinghouse.
a friend maker. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Of introducing for the betterment of society,
Mhm.
and so ensuring that people have access to support and recognizing statistics, understanding the information, understanding what can be done with that information, and understanding the impacts of that information can really help us change the story. And one of the things, as you had just shared, is that we know that the majority of people who were abused do not grow up to become abusers. A
Right.
lot of us have that fear, but the
Mhm.
majority of them don't. But what we also know is that 99% of people who do abuse were abused.
Right.
So the interesting thing is that there's a group of people that chose not to, and then there's a group of people that chose to. But we don't have enough information,
Mhm.
conversation,
Mhm.
data,
Mhm.
willingness to talk to understand the difference. And if
Right.
we understood that difference, that generational cycle that you were just speaking about
Mhm.
could potentially be stopped, could be intercepted, could be kinked or broken, so
Mhm.
that people felt like, oh, well, I don't have to do what my parents did.
Right.
So, and also recognizing, I don't know if you're a mom, but I am, and it
Mhm.
is hard. Like,
Mhm.
being a parent is just simply hard. And
Mhm.
the first 45 years of parenting are the hardest. And
Mhm.
it is like, it's never ending, it's exhausting. And I think creating just some like acceptance around that I've been a bad mom more than a few times. And I know a lot of bad moms, I know a lot of bad dads, but I also know that abusive parents love their children very much.
Sure.
They just don't do it very well. And it's our job to teach them how to do it better. And so, like you said earlier, I've never, like, people don't just say, oh, well, yeah, I'm going to grow up and be an abuser. Or, oh, I want to, like, people don't just choose to do those things. It just happens oftentimes in circumstances under difficult and strenuous situations,
Mhm.
like COVID. That was a perfect example of an uptick. It happens all the time. And it's our job to make safe space for one another so that we
Mhm.
can support our parents, support our kids, and kind of break the cycles. So that's what we're doing.
Right. And what I meant, just to kind of clarify that, was that I know that, as a parent and a grandparent, I had to really think about some of the influence that my grandparents had on my parents, and
Oh,
some of the habits and things that they carried on, not realizing it was abusive. And that's what I'm talking about. A lot of times, you carry on these habits and
yeah,
things that have been going on for years in family after generation, and you don't understand fully I
the
mean, you
impact
understand the impact it had on you, but you don't necessarily understand that
that
was
you could be
abusive,
bad.
or that it's going to reflect on your children and your grandchildren,
Absolutely.
continuing that practice. So that's where I
Oh
was
my
saying,
gosh.
that's where a lot of parents get confused, because
Yeah.
what is abusive to you? Well, you have to
Yeah.
decide. Did you feel negative from it? If you
Yeah.
did, then it's likely an abusive habit that you need to look at and decide if you're going to continue it or not.
Right. And I think that I love that you brought that up, and thank you for bringing that up, because I think that is probably so much more applicable to the
Mhm.
majority of humans than not, right? So we're talking about discipline, we're talking about psychological abuse, we're talking about neglect, you know, and though I just also want to introduce the concept of what you just said is also very true for sexual abuse. I mean,
Mhm.
I've known grown women, the average age for a woman to share her child abuse story is 52. That's a long time to carry that. And I've known grown women who have said to me a number of times, I did not think that my dad climbing into bed with me on a nightly basis was wrong.
Right.
I didn't think that that was wrong until I had my own children.
Mhm.
And like they genuinely, you know what you know. And
Mhm.
so sometimes when your parent is neglecting you or yelling at you, or they're drinking too much, or they're fighting in front of you and there's domestic violence, or they're not home, or they just leave you unattended for days or whatever, you know, a lot of times some of that historical way of the way we parented our kids, get the switch, right? Like go get the tree switch. Those things is we know what we know. And I just find it's not necessary for us to punish or shame our ancestors for the
Mhm.
choices that they made simply
Mhm.
because they did what they knew to do.
Right.
It's our job to decide, is that working? Does
Mhm.
that work for me now? If that doesn't work for me now, I don't have to do it. I don't have
Mhm.
to replicate it.
Mhm.
And for me at least, and I tell this to a lot of parents, both in my therapy practice and in our work at EndCAN, is
Mhm.
that when you do make error,
Mhm.
it could be so beautiful and profound for you to turn around and make an amends to the people that you're harming. Because I don't know, I've I love and really, really value when somebody has hurt my feelings. And instead of justifying or excusing their behaviors, they take responsibility and they just become aware of it. I didn't, that wasn't my intention, you
Right.
know? And it's the medical model's phrase of to err is human.
Absolutely.
Humans make errors. Humans
Mhm.
just make errors. But
Mhm.
it's whether we own our errors that can create that change.
Well, yeah, and we've talked about that a lot here, about the fact that, we are a society that leads by perfection rather than learning from mistakes. And I think that falls into that same category. But just to go back to what you were saying about, the father climbing into bed, it's like I've talked with a lot of women that feel that was an abuse, it was punishment or some infraction, where
Ah,
there's a confusion between what
yeah.
the two are and what the two should be.
Yeah.
So,
And or I've known a lot of specifically sexual abuse survivors who have struggled with this, who have struggled with the sensation of pleasure.
mhm,
That the sometimes the act of sexual activity, and whether it's intercourse or not, but sexual abuse can also be pleasuring. And
Mhm.
so, because you just have these nerve endings as a human, as an animal, not because it's desired, but just simply because you have a body
Yeah,
and
it
your mind
reacts.
and it reacts. Yeah. And so, that is a really common struggle for abuse survivors as
Mhm.
well.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And
it's
again, it's the same thing. It's separating the abuse from some sort of correction or punishment, which, I've talked with a lot of, and it's very, it's very unnerving to understand that deep in the heart, that's where their tripping point is to
yeah,
separate the two, and you see it repeated throughout their life.
yeah, yeah,
So I do
absolutely.
want to get on to some other
Yeah.
things here, but I do love it. So I do want to let you mention though, you still doing the walks? Because
Yeah,
we want to
yeah.
talk
So
about those for just a quick minute.
totally. I love it. Yeah, our walks are probably our most exciting event that we have because they're really community focused. They're a lot of fun. It's just, I mean, the whole goal of NCAN is to introduce a difficult topic filled with, like, saturated with hope and possibility. And that's what all of our walks really do. They're just, it's a good time. It's a great cause. It's great people. But we have walks across the country in various different cities. You can check us out on our website at www.endcan.org. That's ENDCAN.org. And you can go to our Walk Together site or our event site. You can get there both avenues. But so we have walks across the country. Next year we have 4 more cities that are starting. In order to get a walk in your city, you have to be on the planning committee for the year before, just to understand the complexities of doing a walk, because it can be a lot of work, and they're really volunteer driven. And so our volunteers in the cities that we have them are so passionate about spreading the word and bringing together community with hope and possibility, and they're just a great time. I mean, and our walks are typically in the fall season, so it's not so hot, and it's just a great time to gather. And um, but yeah, yeah. So check us out. They're a blast.
Okay, and just so you know, those audience members, you don't need to go grab a pen and paper. We will list all of the links in the show notes for you. So check those out. Go check her out at endcan.org. And let's get on to talking about your book, because there
Yes.
is a connect. But I
Oh,
did want to ask you before we talk about it, are a portion of the sale profits going to NCAN?
yeah. 30% of every book sale goes back to EndCan, and um, I think I would imagine most authors are like, it's almost like starting a business, right? Well, as soon as I move in and I open the doors, it's just going to explode. And so I think and Ken had hoped, and I certainly had hoped that it would, like, we, would have brought in millions of dollars for EndCan, but that's not reality. I mean, reality is that that's not what happens. And though it's been such an honor to be able to give back,
Mhm.
and to be a part of this organization and to watch that cycle be what it is. We have several board members who are also authors, and they've done the exact same thing. And it's just been fun to be able to contribute both, like, within our own share, but also on a monetary basis. So I've loved that.
Are the books available on
Yeah.
NCAN so that you can get a higher percentage of
Oh,
the sale?
no, but that's genius. I hadn't even thought about that. Look at you, marketing guru on the bookseller.
Well, I would
Yeah,
strongly suggest that you do that.
what
And
a great idea.
that way, because if you're doing direct sales, generally you get a much higher profit because the retailers do take a portion of that. So we
Yeah,
would encourage you to keep checking her website to see if they're up, and if they are, we would
I'll do
encourage you to also go ahead and purchase direct from Lori and NCAN any of the books that are listed there. And if she'll give me a list, I will go ahead and list the other books that are benefiting to NCAN, so that we
Oh,
can get
awesome.
some money towards this great cause. So let's talk about the book. I
Yeah.
Live Here, Learning to Heal Through Embracing Your Story.
Yep.
What would you like readers? I love it. What would you like readers to take away from this book?
I think when I was writing this book, really at the beginning, I thought I was just going to be writing my story, and then as I went through the process, I realized it was so much more A than my story, and B than what I ever even imagined, and that it's really not about me. It is about the reader, I really wanted readers to be able to step away, knowing that you know we get through hard things,
Mhm.
and it's not what happens, but it's what we do with what happens.
Mhm.
And I think the other element is that life is filled with conflict and life is filled with hardship. And we get to decide by taking ownership of our own voice and our own perspective. We get to decide how to use that for good. And I know I keep saying that. I feel like I'm a little bit of a broken record, but it's like truly my motto in life. And it's why and what I did this for.
Right. And I also think that it provides those who are so deep in that moment and or just going through it, it provides them, as I said earlier, that hope, that light at the end of the tunnel, that there is another side, that
Yeah.
there is life that continues on, and that this isn't, the end. It may be the low point, but there is more beyond it, and almost giving them a blueprint of a
Yeah.
way through. So I love
Absolutely.
that.
It's like the X at the end of the map, right? Like just keep
Exactly.
following the map. So yeah, 1000%.
Well, and I do love memoirs that have that effect, because you're not only telling your story, you're helping someone else that is dealing with the same thing, but also giving them that hope and freedom and a way to keep moving forward,
Yeah.
and I think for a person that is in that moment, that is a lifeline. It is something that they can latch onto and say, if nothing else, I have this book. If nothing else, I know Lori went through it, I can do
Right.
it.
Well, and I would say that that's one thing that is all throughout the book is really integrating those lessons that I've learned not only just through my life, but in hearing the narrative of others.
Mhm.
And that is the complexity of our hardships. It doesn't just end when that hardship is over. It in fact can be even harder because everything's different. Everything's changed. And learning how to live in a new way can create its own layer of transformation and impact on everything forever. And I just think I kind of go back to that learning to speak. When you learned to talk,
Mhm.
I don't remember anybody teaching me sounds or letters or consonants or vowels. Like, I don't remember anybody ever telling me how to combine those or teaching me when and how to read them. But I know that I did because I do it and use it every day, all day. And so, so it's the same thing as is when we have stuff that we've gone through before the age of 8.
Mhm.
The majority of that stuff is pre-verbal,
Mhm.
and our body still remembers those things, and that can change our chemistry. It can change the way we interact. It changes the way we have relationships. It
Mhm.
just changes everything forever. And
Right.
so I really do try and integrate the outside, that
Mhm.
external impact into my memoir so that people can recognize that it's not just about me, but this is really common for everyone.
Right. And I did love the way you were able to kind of weave those all together, and it gave me a sort of sense of, freedom,
Yeah.
that it's not about that moment of trauma. It's about what you do with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, again, I keep going back to this perfection thing, but I see it a lot. And, we learn more from messing up than we ever do from being perfect. And so, even though this was done to you, it's still a moment where you can pick up and go and find that freedom from just
Absolutely.
moving forward. So I do love that. So This is kind of an odd question, but I love this question to see how people are going to respond to it. So if you could go back to the beginning, what do you wish you knew, or that somebody had told you, or that you could change?
So, when you had sent over these questions previously, and my first response was, and I guess I'm just going to ask it out loud now, the beginning of my life, like before my abduction, or the beginning of writing the book, or both.
Both.
Okay. So if I would have known that I would be here, I would have said no. I would have, I mean, like a 3-year-old can say no, right? But especially when candy is being offered. But that's what happened. I was lured into a car with candy, and I wish I'd known then how this would never go away, that I cannot escape my abduction. I mean, just 2 months ago, a documentary was made on my life, and it's gone viral and has like 7 million views, and it's just insane. And just the impact of it on everything it's touched and everything it's come in contact with is both beautiful and awful. And it's just been a lot, you know. And so I think if I could go back, I would tell myself to say no, obviously. And then if I could go back to the beginning of my book writing journey, um, I would have actually gone forward with a literary agent as opposed to doing self-publishing. I was fearful because my story has been kind of borrowed so many times on a and rewritten for editing purposes and ratings by the media so many times that I really thought that me self-publishing, A, that it would sell millions of copies, but B, that it would give me a lot more control over owners' rights. But I think that with a good attorney and a good representative as a literary agent, I, I wish I would have done that and just gone forward with him. Um, and so, but hindsight's 2020, and it is what it is. It's just been a lot more work for me to do on my own, and I run 3 businesses, and I'm a mom of 7, and it's busy, you know. So it just takes a lot.
No, and I certainly understand that, but I do want to go to your first answer where you were saying that, wish you could go back and not gotten in the
I
car.
know.
But I want you to also think, and this is just the mom and me coming out, that you couldn't have known.
Yeah,
And if you took that away, what would your life be like now?
yeah.
It made you who you are.
1,000%, right? Like, I don't know, I'd probably be in Fiji. And no joke. I might be in Fiji teaching surfing lessons. So, like, I want to dream. But in truth, I'm so proud and honored to be and do what I do. So, and though I know how much harm
Right.
spending 4 days in a toilet, because that's where I ended up after he
Mhm.
was done with me,
Mhm.
and saying yes, I know
Mhm.
how hard that has
Mhm.
been on everyone,
Yeah.
extended family, grandparents, cousins, friends.
But
That's,
again, you were so young, you couldn't have known. So you need to forgive yourself.
yeah,
Because honestly, I want you to think of it this way. If your 3-year-old had said yes, would you be mad? I mean, you would be upset because it happened to them, but you wouldn't be mad at them. So stop being mad at yourself.
right. Oh, thanks, mom.
You're welcome. So, and to talk about, what you're talking about as far as, protecting your rights, I would say as a self-published author, or even as a traditional published author, there is an organization out there that will help you, with some legal advice and stuff like that, called the Writers Guild. I mean, the Authors Guild. And they do a great work in trying to protect you. And I just received some information that I will forward to you about a new program out there to kind of track down people abusing your book or pirating it or abusing the copyright of it. So I know that that's a little more work, and yes, you do get a little bit better tradition with a publishing house, but again, that is against the priority of your book over other books and how many books they publish. So,
Yes.
it may
Yeah.
not always, but as that and just for the simplest way possible, I would always set up a Google alert for your book, your title, and any combination of it so that if anybody
Great idea.
uses it or uses a combination of it or any of the keywords that you might have in the book, then it will alert you so you
Oh,
can kind of keep track of that stuff.
I just need to keep you. Maybe we should just like keep you around regularly. You've given me such great advice. I love it. Thank you.
You're very welcome, and I offer that advice freely for anybody that's a writer or an author, especially if you published. Is go set those Google alerts because they
Yeah.
will. I had one client that his book was pirated almost immediately, and
Oh,
he's like, he knew because we had set those alerts, and he's like, well, how do I do this? And I'm like, you go directly to wherever it was published, and they have a contact form. You contact them and say you're in violation of my copyright.
yeah.
Please take it down.
Yeah. Yeah. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. So, all right. So we want to know what you think your readers will think of your book or will connect with your book 10 to 20 years from now.
I love that question. I hope that my book is a timeless classic. Like, I really do hope that no matter what era we are in, the power of healing is always present, and
Mhm.
the willingness and interest in growing and taking something hard and turning it into something remarkable and beautiful is always present. I mean, I genuinely hope that. And I know historically, like if we look at the history of mankind,
Mhm.
there's been war, there's been power, there's been genocide, there's been, trauma always.
Mhm.
So I can't imagine that ending or going away. It would be lovely, but I can't imagine that ending or going away. And I just hope that, you know, there's always people
Mhm.
that are the salmon swimming upstream, that are the interested ones in the good. And I hope that my book can provide just a glimpse of that for them.
But don't you also hope that the abuse part of it is a moment out of time that is going to be in history and not in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of like suicide, right? I mean, we have just even saying the word suicide 10, 15 years ago was like not spoken.
Mhm.
People did not speak of it at
Mhm.
all.
Right.
And now we do. And
Mhm.
now we do prevention. And now there are safe lines to call and to get help and to get intervention, before, after, for family members, for those impact. Like, it's just so neat to
Mhm.
see what has come of such a hard thing. We've seen it with drunk driving. We've seen it with
Mhm.
smoking. We've seen it with breast cancer. I mean,
Mhm.
there's so many things that in the 80s and 90s nobody spoke of, and it was just unacceptable to even name out loud, and they've changed. So
Mhm.
yeah, I hope that child abuse is it has a whole new language, the
Mhm.
same as many other issues.
Mhm.
I hope that it just doesn't even really exist, that
Right. That's
priority
what, yeah, just relegated to history is something
yeah,
that we used to do.
yeah,
That
yeah.
would that would be amazing, but I do love the part about, dealing with the hard things can still continue on, but let's relegate child abuse to history.
1,000%. I love that. Great way of describing that too.
All right. So we want to know what obstacles or challenges that you've had or that you had to overcome while you were trying to write this book or creating your foundation.
Yeah, so I'm an overachiever, and I'm pretty type A. And I thought, okay, I'm going to write this book. It's going to take me 6 months. I had my literary agent lined up. I had editors. I had book cover. I did my cover and artwork all first. And so I was like ready, ISBN numbers, all of that. And, and then it came to like writing it all down. And just I just somersaulted, and I even describe that in the very beginning of my book. I say, thank you for being on this journey with me, as you read it, you can see that transgression of growth as well.
Mhm.
Um, but I really thought that it was going to be fast and I was going to be done and it was going to be easy and out the door. And it wasn't. It brought up so much and it changed my whole life in
Mhm.
every way, from me having boundaries to, my family systems, to my professional lens, how I speak to and about child abuse, um, my history, the way I show up, my confidence,
Mhm.
my therapeutic relationship with my therapist, the impact on my children.
Mhm.
It's just changed everything. And I did not at all think that that was going to be the case, and it was and has been. So,
Right.
and I'm glad for it. It was hard,
Right.
but I'm glad.
Yeah, I do tell people that, specifically with memoirs, that you're really cracking the egg open and examining every little corner of every emotion, every memory, every thought, every feeling. And it does kind of overwhelm you. It's
Yeah,
like, somebody writing a memoir in 6 months is, a little,
ambitious.
well, it's ambitious, but it's a little diluted because you have to have time to deal with the things that it brings up, because we forget the things that we suppress or that we
Oh
hide or
yeah,
we think that
yeah.
we've dealt with fully.
Or
And
didn't even know, like when you
right,
do
yeah,
your
or just kind of
yeah,
explode from nowhere. It's like
yeah.
you get triggered and you're just like, oh wow. So
Right. Well, and
you
I had people tell me that. I mean, I had a lot of people tell me, yeah, right, six
mhm.
months. Like, there's no way. And you have no idea what it's going to do. And, go slow and give yourself grace. And I was like, Psh, watch me. I mean, my ego was full throttle. And I really did, like, the more I heard that, the more I was like, I'm going to prove these people wrong. And, and then the more I just ate crow over and over and over and over again. Like, just, they were right. They were right.
Well, and here's what I would say is my best advice. A book takes how long, ever long it takes. You'll know when it's finished. You'll
Yes.
know when you've completed the task.
Yeah.
So, yes, while you want to set some boundaries and some deadlines for yourself to stay on task, don't be married to it. Be willing to understand that you're also learning while you're doing it, especially with first books. I mean,
Yeah.
there is so much to learn
So much.
as you're writing the book.
Yeah. Yeah.
That
So
changes the
much.
complexity and the forward movement of the book, that, it does throw you off schedule. So, but I love the book. I think it was well worth the additional, I think you said year that it took you to get it out. So,
2.5. It was a additional 2.5. It took me 3 years to
mhm.
actually get it out. And you're right. It was worth it. And thank you. Thank you for saying that you liked it because
Oh,
it was.
I love the book. I'm back going to read it a couple more times, but I have a few people I'll probably be passing it on to. So, that's always what I love to do with these books that I get sent to display, is try to pass them around and
Yeah.
share the wealth, because
Yeah.
you never know. And of course, we want to encourage you to go pick up Lori's book. So, I want to know, what's something that you learned or discovered that you'd like to pass on to other authors and writers?
I would share similarly to what you just said, is that honoring the time that it takes. And I think it was so accurate when you said you'll know when it's done. Because I think in my mind, I'm such a planner, I'm such a to-do lister, but this wasn't linear. It was an experience. It was just this phenomenon of an experience. And so embracing that, and I look forward to, I already have 4 other books outlined and ready, and I look forward to writing those. Certainly won't be as emotionally taxing, I think, as this one, because this one is me. This one is my heart and my soul. Um, and though it took what it took. And
Mhm.
I just think that's neat. And it was this like developmental phase that I needed to go through as an adult of like, I can't control everything. And
No.
as much as I wanna,
Well,
I can't.
and
So
I compare it, like you said, to learning to read.
yeah,
You learn to read, you have to learn the language of reading and the language of spelling and the language of sound to be able to read. And you almost have to learn it in a more precise way when you're writing, because not only you need to understand the language you understand, you need to understand the language that other people are going to want to understand, because we
yeah,
do tend, especially here in the United States, to speak in shorthand, speak in the way of people around us,
yeah,
but
yeah,
that doesn't always work well in the broad audience. So it
yeah,
is about learning the language of writing
yeah,
oftentimes that sort of trips writers up. It's like, well, that's the way I see it. And I'm like, okay, that may be true, but is somebody going to understand that? It's
yeah.
like,
Does it translate the same? Yeah,
right.
exactly.
I'm from the South, and it's like we have, this weird thing where we talk slowly, so we jam words together into one word to kind of speed up that process, and it doesn't translate outside of Southern states. I use the term "Did you eat yet?" In the South, they say "Jeet yet."
Yes, I love that.
Or instead of "we're going to go do something," we're fixing to do it. And so, but that doesn't translate into a book. You have
Yeah,
to think about what people universally would
comprehend.
understand,
Yeah,
unless
yeah.
specifically, talking about, growing up in that environment. So I think that that's amazing. So I want to know what keeps you motivated.
I think, mm, hmm, okay. The first thing that keeps me motivated is my children, and including my stepchildren. Um, they have experienced family trauma and dynamics that make me want to keep doing this work. And professionally, there is not a day where I don't meet or have a conversation with someone who I get to either learn from or teach. And that in and of itself is like, yep, that's why I keep doing it. And so it's just really fun. I love that, and that's why I keep getting up every day.
Right. And I agree with you. My motto is learn something new every day. And it's like sometimes you'll see me at 11:30 at night scrolling through my phone. What can I learn today? What can I learn today?
Got to get it in.
I gotta get it in so I can go to sleep. So we're talking about reviews this season on the Writer's Parachute. So we want you to write a review for your book.
Yeah. Yeah, so my review would be that I Live Here is the title in and of itself is a symbol of what the body responds to as normal. So when I was found, they asked, "What am I doing in the bottom of an outhouse toilet?" And I said, "I live here." And that is the response that I think so many people will hopefully experience in reading my book. That's not my review. Back to my review. Sorry,
Okay.
I'm digressing. Um, but that the title itself is the symbol of where one starts, where one embraces and accepts as their normal, and we get to create what's possible for one another. And I believe that this book does exactly that. It gives people a new lens of all things possible while walking along with me through my journey and learning what they can do for theirs. And so that's what I would say.
I think that's an awesome review. I think you nailed it. And our point is to let our listeners know that's how easy a review can be.
Yeah.
So just speak from your heart. Tell us what you think, what you want others to know, and you've got it down. Not a difficult journey. So We want to know what's next for Lori. You kind of teased us with some more books. We want to hear
Yeah.
what's next.
Yeah, so I have a few book outlines prepared and ready. My next book that I'm actually working on is called The Instructions Manual, The How To for Parents. And I'm really excited about that because as a family therapist and as a child and adolescent therapist, I think the reality is that there's no right way to raise your children, and that it's always keeping kids and kids' needs first, not what we think their needs are, but what their needs are. And I think that that's really important. And then I will continue to be working at EndCAN and ending child abuse and neglect for as long as it takes until I'm shuffled off the stage and I decide to go find a beautiful cabin in the mountains or on the beach and just spend the rest of my days writing. I look forward to becoming more of a full-time writer after retiring from this career, but I've got a lot of work to do. And so I could really use the audience's help with achieving that work by ending child abuse. It's going to take all of us. It's not just me. And so I'm just going to keep at that.
Yeah. So we're hoping that your organization becomes obsolete very soon.
That's the goal. That's the goal. I'm working my way out of a job.
There you go. I always love those. It's like we're trying to make it so I don't have to do this anymore. So
Exactly.
we want to know where listeners can find your books.
Yep. So I'm on Goodreads, I'm on Barnes and Noble, and I'm on Amazon. Um, and then I will be on our website at www.endcan.org. People can find us there as well.
Okay, awesome. Well, and if you can't find her book at one of your local retailers or you'd like to go to one of the smaller bookstores, the smaller locally owned bookstores, you can just Google her book on Google, and I'm sure it will tell you where the local bookstores have it for you. Or if not, reach out to Lori. And again, we'll have all of her information at the end of the show and encourage you again to go to our website so that we can get more of the sales direct to EndCAN. So where can they find you on social media?
So you can find me on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook, and on TikTok. I'm under LoriPoland.com and Lori Poland, and that's Lori, short and sweet, although I'm tall and sweet. And you can also find me through our website at EndCAN. I'm on there if you are ever looking for a speaker. I've been a public speaker since I was 15 years old, so it's been a while. And I love to do conferences. I love to work with nonprofits. I love to work with leaders, and doing all of that is really fun and true to my heart. So I can be found in any of those ways.
Okay, awesome. We will have those listed for you, and we want to make sure that you check out their calendar to make sure you can see if one of her walks for
Yeah.
EndCAN is in your local area, or you can contact her and find out how you can get on the board to see if you can get a local walk in your area. We do encourage you that. So do you have any upcoming events or anything that you
Yeah.
would like to add for our audience?
Yeah, so we have EndCAN Giving Day. It's a day of hope and possibility, and that is on June 27th. It's a virtual day. We're headquartered in Colorado, and so we will have an in-person event on that day if anybody is able to make it. We have today we have a walk May 23rd at the Sheridan downtown. It's with the American Professional Society Against Child Abuse. There's 700 to 1,100 people that will be joining us walking the sidewalks of Denver with a couple of bands and a cheer squad, and that should just be really fun with bubbles and wands. And people are welcome to come down. It's free. It's just an awareness builder, so that's a good time. And then all of our walks, the Walk Together walks, are in the fall, September and October.
Okay, great. Well, we will let them know about that. Again, we'll add that to our show notes and, of course, link you to all of her social media and her website so that you can stay in touch with Lori. I will also link you to her book. Hopefully, she'll have it up on her website. So we want to encourage you to go there.
Yeah.
Was there anything else you want to include before we go to our tip of the week?
I just want to thank you. Thank you for your willingness to share, and thanks to the listener for hearing. I know this is a more of a challenging topic, and a lot of times people want to, change the channel. But I'm really grateful for the ear and an opportunity to just talk about what's possible. So thank you.
You're very welcome. We'll stick around. We'll come back and just have a closing talk here in just a moment. So I wanted to jump into our tip of the week, and we talked to Lori about what she was having problems or challenges with when she was putting out her book. And one of the things she was talking about was the timing of it, all the steps and the complexity of getting from idea to a book in her hand. And we talked about that just a little bit about, giving yourself grace and that it takes however long it takes and that you'll know when you're done. But the thing of it is again, what we said, you want to give yourself some deadlines that keeps you on track, but don't be married to those deadlines. Life happens to all of us. Things get in the way. We want to write every day for however long we want to write or however many days a week we're able to write. But then things happen, especially if you have kids and a spouse, or, you have other commitments and obligations. They do tend to kind of disrupt your life, as my mother always said. And again, I'll bring my mother into this. It's like, if you want a disruption, make a plan. Because that always happens. No matter how carefully I plan, there's always going to be something that's going to upset my plans, upset my schedule, and just throw it off. And I just have to learn to accept that. That's part of what you're doing. And again, we talked about the learning process that you're going through, especially if you're writing a first-time book or you're writing in a new genre. There's a level of learning that you're going through as you're writing that book. You're learning to speak to that particular audience versus the audience that you have now spoken to. You're learning to communicate in the language that is acceptable for that genre. In other words, if you're writing sci-fi or fantasy, it's going to be a different language and structure than if you're writing, let's say, romance, or if you're writing children's books. It's very different, and you have to learn that language and that structure and the guidelines or the guide rails for each of those genres. So there is always going to be a certain learning. There's also the learning of the market is constantly changing. There's always new things. There's always new apps. There's always new technology that you're going to need to incorporate. There's always going to be new people to help you and, obstacles that get in your way. So you have to give yourself that grace. So what I would say is to sit down when you're working on your book and really think about the book as an elephant. It just is. I don't care if it's a children's book or a huge, fantasy novel. It's an elephant. You need to look at it as an elephant and decide how you're going to put it into bite-sized pieces. That's going to give you a more realistic view of how long it takes. If you know that you have to write a chapter, how long is a chapter going to be? I don't know. Is it going to be 100 words? Is it going to be 500 words? Is it going to be 2,000 words? You need to figure that out. Here again, you're not married to it. You can change it, but you need to have some idea. Well, how long does it take you to write 2,000 words? Can you do it every day, or does that take you more of a couple of days? Does that take you more of a week, depending on the amount of time and the interruptions you have? So as you can see, what I'm going with here is you really need to break it down into bite-sized steps that keep you moving forward. That will give you a better indication of how long it's going to take, and give yourself room for research, give yourself room for technology, and give yourself room for those moments when we go down the rabbit hole. because they happen. They happen no matter how hard we fight against it. Something interesting will catch your eye. Even in research, it's like I have to put timers on when I do research, because if I don't, I'll sit there forever and ever and try to learn everything there is to know about whatever it is I'm researching. And that's not necessary. But again, these are some of the things that we have to take into consideration. So make sure you add those moments in there to it. And, and even with that, I had one children's author that I worked with, and she got her manuscript written, she got it edited, she found an illustrator. Her illustrator was supposed to start work in 2 months, and then the 2 months came by, and her illustrator's like going, yep, nope, I'm hung up on another project. I can't get to you for another 4 months. you know it took her 6 months to find the illustrator. So it's kind of like, well, do I try and find somebody else, or do I just, suffer through the 4 months? Those things happen, so you have to be ready to roll with the punches, so to speak. So I don't want to give you an overwhelmed view here, but at my best, I would say the tip is break it down into actual manageable steps that you can give a credible time to. And that will help you figure it out and give you more of a sense of peace of how quickly you can get it done, instead of this, this I can do it kind of, cheerleader doing a herky. It's kind of, it may work in the short term, but in the long term, it's just going to frustrate you. So that's our tip of the week for you. We welcome you here at the Writer Parachute. Lori, we are so thankful to have you here. We're so glad to talk about your organization, EndCAN. We encourage people to check out the website, and we also encourage people to check out her book, I Live Here, Learning to Heal Through Enduring Your Story. So we want to welcome you back when your new books are out, and we'll keep those posted. We'll have all the show notes for you. And of course, I'm always so thankful and grateful to be the host here of the Writer's Parachute, guiding author and writer dreams to a perfect landing. And we hope that you find the Writer's Parachute a creative space for you to land all your dreams to. Until next time, bye.
Bye.